Hi,
Yeah, hi.
welcome
This
to Purana Talk.
Purana Talk, and we're the Purana guys, Ted and Bob. We're doing the Garuda Purana, the first skanda, and we are now at chapter 222, Expiation. Brahma said, I shall explain the rites of atonement, quelling sins conducive to being confined in hell. Flies, sprays of water, woman, water on the surface of the earth, fire, cat, and mongoose are always pure.
That's an interesting combination. I want that list, please.
Yeah, I'm not even sure that they didn't mean the opposite because it starts with flies, for God's sake.
Flies.
Flies, sprays of water, woman, water on the surface of the earth, fire, cat, and to be perfectly accurate, it says mongoose.
Mungoose. Mungoos.
That's what it says, but we know it means MON. Are always pure.
All right, that's interesting to me
Yeah, it's interesting.
because we have a bunch of symbols of the goddess here. We've got the cat, the woman.
Well, woman, flies.
Well, I'm not so sure about that. Fire and water
Flies.
are necessary for domestic behavior.
Well, let's go on. You know,
Right.
we can speculate. 2. If inadvertently a Brahmin takes food defiled by the uchishta of a Shudra, and it says that's the residual of food eaten by a Shudra. So you actually, if you
accidentally eat their leftovers.
Yeah, or something that's been touched by. He should fast for a day and night and drink panchagavya. He shall be purified. And that, again, is the 5 elements of the cow. So milk, yogurt, ghee, urine, dung. If a Brahmin and another Brahmin are mutually defiled by their uchishta, the expiatory rite is taking a bath in japa. They shall take food only at the end of the day. So if you eat each other's food that's been defiled somehow by them, you don't, and it's not defiled just by sharing food, but it might be defiled by some other way. I don't know. It's not.
They'll probably give us a list of what defiles it.
4 to 5, stanza 4-5. If anyone takes food containing flies or bits of hair, he shall immediately vomit it out for purity. So much for flies being always pure. This is why I wonder if they didn't mean impure.
Yeah, perhaps.
Like you get hit in the face with water coming from God knows where. Is that, that might be the spray of water that's on the ground, that people walk on, of course, women, obviously.
But all lakes are on the ground. All rivers are on the ground.
Yeah, but that might not really be what it means. It might mean like mud puddles or.
No, I know.
All right. Vomit that stuff out. He who takes foodstuffs, keeping them in the palms, or licks the finger, or eats food placed on the arms, shall be purified after the expiry of a day and night. Or he shall drink water poured out to him. Water drunk with the left hand, or water drunk by others partially, is like toddy, and so shall not be drunk, or if drunk, one incurs the sin of drinking toddy. In other words, if you drink water that's been impurified in this way, like you pick up somebody else's water glass that they've already drunk out of, or you drink water with your left hand, which is, the one you use to clean yourself in other ways, it's as bad as drinking alcohol. So this is coming from that perspective. 6, water taken in a leather bag is impure.
See, what was I saying about calabash this morning?
Yeah.
That there were 2 main ancient ways of carrying water. One was in a gourd, and the other one was in a skin.
Yep. And the non-veg way is the leather bag, and the veg way is the gourd. If a low caste person resides in the house of any one of other castes without declaring that he is of low caste, the expiatory rite for the twice born is Chandrayana or Paraka. Chandrayana is something like it's a lunar practice. It's the lunar vehicle. I'm not sure what Paraka is. That for a Shudra is Prajapatya rite. If you're a Shudra, you do Prajapatya rite. If you're a twice born, you do the Chandrayana or Paraka purificatory rite. If the person resides knowingly, other types of expiatory rites are to be performed. So this is if a low caste turns out to be living in your house and you didn't realize he was such a low caste, you can do this purificatory rite, and
That'll be okay.
As long as he leaves, I guess. That for a shooter. But if you knowingly, there are other types of expiatory rites, it says. 8. He who takes cooked food there shall perform half of a krichra penance. Those who take the food of these people shall perform a fourth of the krichra penance. The Brahmin who takes food of a washerman, an actor, a bamboo worker, or a cobbler has to perform Chandrayana penance. If inadvertently he drinks water from a well or water pot belonging to a Chandala, he shall perform the Santapana penance. Santapana penance. A Vaishya shall perform half of that. A Shudra in the circumstances shall perform a quarter of that. For inadvertently taking food in the house of a low caste, the atonement is 3 krichras. For approaching an antyaja woman, a low caste woman, low-born, literally, the expiatory rite is a paraka. A Brahmana taking the uchishta of a low caste man, leftover food, becomes pure by performing Chandrayana. If inadvertently he takes a Chandala's food, he should perform Aindhana, a variety of Santapana form of expiatory rite. And I think that we're assuming that a Chandala is lower even than a Shudra, so they've like fallen off the big 4 caste varna system: Brahma, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. A Kshatriya shall perform Santapana, and the others shall perform Japa Yajna for a night. If a Brahmin eats the fruit from the same tree as a Chandala inadvertently, he becomes pure after the lapse of a day and a night. By eating uchishta, impurity is incurred, which shall be removed by vomiting it off. If he touches a Chandala, he shall repeat Gayatri 8,000 times, or Drupada mantra 100 times. Go for Drupada. The atonement for taking the food of a Chandala or a Shvapacha, those who cook dogs, a dog eater, or taking food after evacuating the bowels or urination without customary washing, is fasting for 3 nights. The expiation for approaching an Antyaja woman is Paraka penance. That's presumably for having sexually approaching a low-born woman. 16. Expiation for indulging in sexual intercourse with an unwilling woman is Paraka. Rape?
Yeah, I think so.
I think that we'll have to ask Bill Cosby, but I don't know. There is no expiation for a low caste man in a similar context.
There's no way. In other words, if you're high caste, you can be forgiven, but not if you're low caste.
Oh, okay. It's just expected.
It's just more stupid stuff. Sorry.
17. If a Brahmin drinks water in a vessel that had contained wine and hence had been defiled, he is purified by a quarter of Krichra penance and by undergoing all the sanskaras. In other words, the rituals from the investiture with the sacred thread and other rites, all over again. Oh, please.
You have to start over.
God.
We
can have opinions about these things. It's okay.
Well, we do. We're bound to, because we come from a different culture.
Well, a lot of it is about keeping a very high consciousness of the particular requirements and the interaction limitations between people. That is, it's like So it sets up a whole schedule of things you have to do if you cross these barriers in a way to keep people on the path that is seen as appropriate to their station, to their family, to their place, and stuff like that. Just eliminate the possibilities of straying in various ways that would be considered polluting, and so.
Well,
But what it comes out like is a bunch of social stigmatizing crap about class,
and I think a lot of cultures had this going.
yeah.
This isn't something that just India did.
Oh no,
but
they just did it in a very
they
unique
still
way.
do it more, maybe, because they're more class conscious in this way than many cultures are. Like, they still want to know what caste you are.
Yeah.
Even though it's officially not
know.
Okay to know. Everybody wants to know.
I'm fascinated anyway. I always like to know what communities, but I think also for a lot of Indians today, it becomes more of an interest in the origins of the person than the opportunity to do all the calculations about how you can and cannot interact with them.
Well, I think a lot of people that are raised Hindu aren't necessarily completely observant of this sort of thing.
Oh,
they wouldn't know what to do.
Not to the nth degree.
Realize they might know that it wasn't favored. This kind of interaction isn't favored, but they wouldn't know necessarily what to do about it. Or
it emerges in certain things like marriage arrangements and stuff like that, where
or a priest might tell them to do it.
Yeah,
and then they might do it, but they're not reading the Puranas like we are, studying them usually. So that happens.
Let's go on.
Yeah.
We're at 18. Brahmins who had once renounced the world but are desirous of starting the life of a householder again, after gathering food and drink, shall perform 3 krishras and 3 chandrayanas. The sage of Vashishta has laid down all the sanskaras beginning with postnatal rites. A defiled woman shall become pure again by prajapatya and other rites by feeding to Brahmins. A Brahmin defiled by the touch of a dog, or a Shudra defiled by Uchishta shall fast for a night and drink Panchagavya. He shall become pure. Touched by an outcast, he shall fast for 5 nights. So even for a Shudra, which is the lowest level of the Varna system and not a twice-born, it's still accepting the idea that they can be defiled and they can be pure and regain their purity. And, it's not. But outcasts, I think, there's sort of a notion that they are in the impure realm, and
by
so
definition,
touched. But it's not going to tell us how an outcast can become pure, because that just can't happen.
Right.
Touched by an outcast, he shall fast for 5 days. This is a Shudra. A continuous stream of water is never defiled. Dust blown out by wind is pure. Women, children, and old men are never polluted. All right, we're going to take a little break again.
We're back.
See, you hardly noticed. All right, well, we're in this very interesting section about purity and pollution, which there is a long tradition of being a little overly obsessed with in Hindu culture. Not to be judgmental or anything, but there you go. I think we're entitled to be a little judgmental. Come on, we're human. A continuous stream of water is never defiled. They get this notion in India. As long as water is moving, it's considered
this
pure.
This is important in Islam, too.
Yeah.
How you can tell whether you can use water or not.
Right.
It has to be moving.
Dust blown out by wind is pure. That's good, because, you never know when a gust of wind is going to blow some dust in your face. And I wouldn't expect science would say that it's always pure. But it would be impractical to have to stop and do purification rituals every time a bit of dust blew in your face in India, I'm sure, so because of the climate. Women, children, and old men are never polluted. That's very interesting. How can they say that and then tell you that women have to separate themselves during menses and stuff because they're... How can they say that?
Well, think of it this way.
Or maybe they're not polluted by other things. Is that what they're saying? They're not, as opposed to being polluted beings.
I don't know what they're getting at exactly. But what I think they're saying is, like, your mother is always pure to you, no matter
what. How about
what,
this one? In 23, the next one begins... perhaps. The next one begins, the mouth of women is always pure. The fruit struck down by birds is pure. A calf at the coming out of its mother animal's womb, is pure.
You know how moms will spit on their finger and wipe something off you.
Ew, it's pure. It's pure. It's mom spit. Won't hurt you. My mom didn't do that to me much, but my grandma did. Grandma spit's another issue, at least from the perspective of a kid. It was kind of... Okay, a dog in the act of seizing a beast of game is pure. So dogs are impure by nature, but when he's bringing down your hunting rewards for your hunting, it's okay. He doesn't render the creature impure that you've murdered.
And the Celts used dogs specifically to heal. They kept dogs for this purpose, to lick the wounds and stuff. And there were actually like ceremonial sites that's what they did there.
24. Aquatic animals while in water, and surface and non-aquatic animals in the ground are pure. A person standing in water and performing achamana shall attain purity. A vessel of bell metal not defiled by wine becomes pure by the application of ashes. If defiled by wine, it becomes pure by cow's urine or by heating. Bell metal smelt by cows or containing the uchishta of a shudra or struck by a crow or a dog become pure by rubbing them with ash 10 times. Smelt by cows. Like if a cow has come up and smelled your bell metal, I would think that would purify it, but it's saying that maybe if it's snots on it or something, they do that sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
27. A Brahmin taking food in the vessel of a Shudra should fast and then take Panchagavya. A Brahmin who has not rinsed his mouth after taking food becomes impure when touched by a dog or a Shudra or others of a higher caste. He shall fast for regaining purity. Defiled by the touch of a woman in her menses, he shall take Panchagavya for purity. If a person evacuates his bowels or urinates in a dry place or in a road infested by thieves and tigers, he is not defiled if he holds some coins in his hand.
That's an interesting one.
While taking shaucha, he shall place the coins on the ground. That is to say, when you're cleansing yourself with water after having evacuated said bowels. Shaucha. Gruel, curd, milk, buttermilk, and krishara, that's a mixture of jaggery rice and gingelly seeds, can be taken even from a shudra. These are things that don't become impure, even if a shudra handles
30.
them. This is 30. These, together with pulse and honey, can be taken from a low caste person. 31. If a Brahmin or other castes drink gauri, paishti, or madhvika type of wine, they shall expiate by drinking red-hot wine. So if you
burn yourself,
if you drink these wines, okay, you can get over it if you drink really hot wine. That's interesting. 32. Defiled by taking food or drinking water in a house defiled by the impurity of death or birth of a child, a Brahmin should repeat Gayatri 500 times. A Kshatriya and a Vaishya in similar circumstances shall repeat Gayatri 100 times. 33. When someone dies in the family, a Brahmin remains impure for 10 days, a Kshatriya for 12 days. A Vaishya becomes pure after 15 days, and a Shudra in a month. So lower castes remain impure longer after a death in the family. That's kind of interesting. If a king dies in battle or while performing a sacrifice or during a sojourn in a foreign land, if a child less than a month old dies, the purity is instantaneous. There is no impurity. Interesting. So a death in the family, there is no impurity if the king dies in battle or while performing a sacrifice or during pilgrimage, travel in foreign lands, or if a child dies that's less than a month old, which seems to be like a different category altogether. 35-36. An unmarried girl, a Brahmin boy not yet invested with the sacred thread, a boy who has cut his first tooth, and a 3-year-old girl. If these die, the impurity is for 3 days. If there is abortion, the impurity is for as many days as the number of months of conception. A woman in her menses becomes pure on the 4th day. It's interesting. So abortion is seen as a death and is treated as incurring a certain amount of impurity, which is specified relative to the age of the fetus.
It's always upsetting for the parent. Whether it's intentional or whether it's...
A woman in her menses becomes pure on the 4th day after they cease, or what is this?
Yeah, I guess so.
37-38. In times of famine, civil commotion, etc., during the days of initiation, in the practice of a religious rite, marriage preparation, invitation to a Brahmin for a shraddha, etc., impurities due to birth or death do not act as obstacles, nor can the regular charity, etc., be disturbed. 39. A Brahmin becomes impure by touching his wife in confinement. There is no impurity due to birth, where sacrificial fires are daily nurtured. Vedas are regular, so in a house that has sacrificial fires daily going, which would be a Brahmin household certainly, there is no impurity due to birth. I actually stopped a bit prematurely. There's no impurity due to birth where sacrificial fires are daily nurtured. Vedas are regularly recited, or Vaishvadeva Shraddha is constantly performed. If a Brahmin takes food in a house where the impurities are present, he becomes pure after 3 days. Women of 4 castes in their menses become impure again due to mutual touch. The Brahmin woman becomes pure after 3 days, the Kshatriya woman after 2 days, the Vaishya woman after fasting for a day, and the Shudra woman after taking a bath. Things measured in dronas are not to be cast off as defiled by them. That's weird. Okay. Cooked food touched by dogs or crows becomes defiled. The upper layer of such food should be thrown away. For the purification of the remaining food, it should be sprinkled with water from a vessel in which a piece of gold is kept and heated over fire for a short time. Short while, it says. If anyone happens to drink water from a well where the dead body of a dog, jackal, or a monkey has fallen, the expiation for a Brahmin is fasting for 3 days, for a Kshatriya for 2 days, and for a Vaishya a single day. If bones, hides, feces, or the dead body of a mouse fall into a well, the water shall be drained off, and the well should be sprinkled with Panchagavya. It becomes pure again. If a tank or a lake is defiled as above, holy ashes should be sprayed over it, and 6 potfuls of water should bet a ken out. Oh, yes, of course. Bet a ken out.
Be taken.
Oh, that's it. They put the space in the wrong place. Water should be taken out. If Panchagavya is poured thereafter, it becomes pure again. 47. The menstrual blood flowing into a tank contaminates it. 30 potfuls of water should be taken out of the tank for purification. If anyone indulges in sexual intercourse with a forbidden woman, drinks wine, or eats beef, he becomes impure. The atonement for a Brahmin then is Chandrayana penance. For a king, it is Prajapatya penance. For a Vaishya, it is Santapana. And for a Shudra, it is fasting for 5 days. After performing the expiatory rites, they should make gifts of cow and feed Brahmins. Gifts of cows. During sports, wearing of blue cloth is not forbidden. Is it otherwise forbidden?
It must be. You know, that may be a dye issue. Like
indigo is mentioned in the next section. Let's listen to what they have to say. During sports, wearing of blue cloth is not forbidden, nor is it forbidden as a bedsheet. An indigo-dyed cloth should not be touched otherwise. Persons regularly using blue cloth will fall into hell. So you can use it for sports and a bed sheet.
But you shouldn't wear it all the time.
You shouldn't be wearing it.
So lots of us in the West are in big trouble.
Yeah, well, Blue jeans will make you go to hell already anyway, so now we know why. 5053. The slayer of a Brahmin, the wine addict, the thief, the defiler of a preceptor's bed, and those who associate with such sinners become pure after seeing the great bear. Ursa Major, I think, is what they're talking about, the constellations.
Mm-hmm.
Then he should make a gift of 100 cows and feed Brahmins. The slayer of a Brahmin must stay in a cottage in a forest for 12 years. The wine addict should fall into fire. The thief should hand over everything he possesses to a Brahmin. The defiler of a preceptor's bed shall make the gift of a bull or 1,000 cows. Pick the bull. Binding the 2 legs of a cow, tying it illegally, and allowing it to die in conflagration or in a forest makes one a sinner, and he should perform the complete kritra penance. If a cow dies due to the defect in tying the bell round its neck, if one breaks its bones or horns, if one strips its skin, if one cuts its tail or wounds its nose, one shall expiate by taking over barley water for a fortnight. Taking only maybe, but it says taking over, but taking only barley water for a fortnight is more likely.
Yeah,
injuring elephants or horses by means of weapons is also sinful and should be atoned for by performing the complete kritra penance, which is significant. So no injuring elephants or horses with weapons. 57. Inadvertently taking in feces or urine, or by touching wine, the twice-born becomes sinful and should undergo all the samskaras over again, all the life cycle rites you went through since getting the holy thread. Or the tonsure, depending on where you start, I guess. 58. While undergoing the samskaras all over again, the items of tonsure, wearing of kusha, girdle, holding of the staff, and the rites of begging alms can be omitted. You don't have to do those again. I don't know how you cut the hair for the first time anyway on somebody that's grown up. Raw flesh, ghee, honey, and oil kept for a long time when taken out of the vessel of an antyaja become automatically pure. A lowborn. The vessel of a lowborn. So raw flesh, really? Ghee, honey, and oil kept for a long time when taken out of the vessel of an antyaja become automatically pure. You don't have to understand all of this.
Well, and there was probably reasons for all of this.
Raw flesh?
Well, you wanted to be able to buy it somewhere.
Jerky?
Probably. This is probably an
old,
a
kept
way
for a
of,
long time. It becomes pure automatically when you take it out of the vessel of a lowborn.
I think it's permission so that you can buy stuff in the marketplace. Probably.
Okay.
Without knowing everything about the history of the people you bought it from.
Maybe it's meat pickle. They eat meat pickle in India. I've never had it. The 1/4 kritra consists of taking a single food for the first day, a single night food for the second day, and unsolicited food for the third day. The same with a fast for the 4th day is half a kritra. Twice that is prajapatya, which atones for all sins. A kritra with 7 days fast is called mahasantapana. 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 How about that? Tapana. That's better than.
So these are types of fasting. Or something.
Yeah. 62. Taking hot water alone for 3 days, then taking hot milk alone for 3 days, then taking hot ghee alone for 3 days is called tapta kritra. It quells all sins. A paraka penance that quells all sins consists of fasting for 12 days. In the expiatory rites, morsels of food must be increased by 1 each in the bright half and decreased by 1 each in the dark half. How many bites you can take. The constituents of Panchagavya are as follows. Milk taken from a gold-colored cow, the cow dung of a white cow, urine of a copper-colored cow, clarified butter of the milk of a blue cow, and the curd of the milk of a black cow. Water added should be consecrated by kush grass. 8 mashas of cow's urine, 4 mashas of dung, 12 mashas of milk, 10 mashas of curd, and 5 mashas of ghee form the correct proportions. This Panchagavya removes all impurities. Well, generally the Panchagavya is really just considered those 5 elements, milk, urine, ghee. Milk,
But here it's
yogurt, ghee, urine, and dung. But here it tells you what color a cow it ideally comes from.
Yeah, right.
And what proportions they should be added together.
So if you want your Ayurvedic Panchagavya, this is what you're really after.
8 of urine, 8 parts urine, 4... Wait. So in terms of parts, because it is a little curious when you're mixing urine and dung into your things you're going to eat. But 8 parts urine, 4 parts dung, 12 parts milk, 10 parts curd, 5 parts ghee.
And curd, they mean yogurt.
Yogurt, yes.
Ghee is clarified butter.
So 12, 22, 27 parts of these other things against 12 parts of dung and urine. Maybe if you just take a little tiny bit. That's it. That's the whole chapter. All purificatory, pollution and purification.
How you get dirty and how you get clean. And
according
to
your caste, your varna specifically, caste.
Which is really talking about, caste is really about a bunch of things, but there's a few things that are really misunderstood about it, I think. It's really like what your family occupation is. It's really about what your social standing is, like what you do for a living in society. And it's established, I think, by who the most recent winning tribe was. So as new tribes come in, they push down the people that were there before and the pattern of life they had, and they bring their own pattern of life and put it on top. And there's 5 layers like this in Ireland, for instance, that you.
Well, it is kind of, I've heard it suggested that in the progression, the historical progression with the incursion of Indo-Aryan people into India, that they had basically brought a kind of tripartite social structure with them, which was to say there were priests, kings, warriors, and then there were the other people that were basically largely herders at the time. They became cattle people, but as these roaming tribes settled down, they became agriculturists as well. Right. And these were the Vaishyas. The Shudras then were anybody who worked for these, were the lower castes, who became the lower caste people. It may have been that Shudras were incorporated as the community settled as well in agriculture and became, actually had settled communities and were on the move as immigrant masses of populations. The so-called Aryan invasion, or the Indo-Aryan invasion, which is, I think, recognized as being a bit of a misnomer, since anything that moves that slow is hard to call
an invasion.
It lasted for a very long time. So then, what you have then is the 4 groups. 3 of them become, are considered the twice born because they go through these rituals of the upper castes.
And they're all of one culture at that point.
Yeah, and then the Shudras, who may have been indigenous Indians, are grafted onto that. And then there's all the people that fall outside of that system.
Right.
And there are either people that pre-existed this community when it moved and established itself someplace, or people that followed it into that area but had not been defined as part of what by then had become a 4-part caste system. Right. And Varna literally means colors. And you could even associate colors with the castes if you want to. White becomes the Brahmins, the red is the Kshatriyas, the yellow is the Vaishyas, and the black is the Shudras. Chandalas become signify, I think, the people outside of the Varna system, even lower than Shudras. And so, and it's very interesting. Louis Dumont wrote a great work, Homo Hierarchicus, that was about caste, and it deals largely with issues of purity and pollution. this approach has been criticized as well since then as but purity and pollution is definitely an interesting thing worthy of much consideration in South Asian Hindu culture. And
Well, I think in culture in general, really.
Yeah.
Because a lot of what religion is about is figuring out what it is that makes you impure or unhappy or diseased and removing that from your life in some way.
But I think what is unique to a large extent about the Hindu discourse is that it links it to social structure in this way.
Oh, many of them do originally.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it survived through whatever transformation it went through to get to where we are now.
And a lot of it's about food too. Food is really important. Like who can take food from whom?
Right.
What caste can give food to what other castes?
Who can eat together?
And what kinds of food? In India, it's very, Dumont and others have talked a lot about cooked rice versus raw rice, for example. Raw rice tends to retain its purity, whereas cooked rice carries pollution more between
Here
castes.
they were saying, you couldn't even eat off the same tree, which is very weird.
Well, it's saying if a Brahmin accidentally ate fruit off of a low caste person's tree or a Chandala's tree, there was a relatively simple expiatory rite that could be done. It wasn't one of the big stinkers, but
it's surprising it would even matter.
Yeah. Well, I say, I think a lot of these are signposts just to kind of keep you really aware all the time of who you are in this social structure and what you draw from. And in a sense, the Brahmin shouldn't be eating from the Chandala's tree, especially if the Chandala is of lower caste, obviously is of lower caste, but has more difficulty in accessing food, for example. I mean, there may be benefits even to those who seem to be besmirched by the the negativity implied by this purity and pollution, may actually in some ways protect them.
Well, I think
not
the
to
goal
defend the system,
is
but
to do that.
Maybe. I mean, there is this notion that if it's all working, it's not, and the issue is not so much keeping the poor down, but creating a whole that is harmonious and good, even for wherever you are in the social structure.
Well, this thing that we have in these traditions, that when you're old, you go and live in the forest. In a lot of ways, this is returning to Eden in a way, in Western thinking. It's this attempt to go back to this natural way of life where you're eating roots and fruits. And to
deliberately cut the attachments to material involvement in the world that, essentially are the things that breed unhappiness, according to this theory.
You have the tribal traditions of hunting and gathering, that this is a lot like your lower caste in a way.
Just where they're at technologically, what they have access to.
That's what they're doing. They're killing animals and eating them, and they're gathering out of the forest.
And they are the people that fall outside of the Varna system. This is
gleaning out of the field.
The indigenous people that fall outside of Hinduism completely sometimes in India. Are the hunters, the native hunters in the forest.
That leads to herding and those sorts of traditions where you keep cows, you keep goats, you keep animals, and you use their product. And it even manifests in Africa, where they're actually drinking the blood of the animal, like Zulu and those traditions, where they're actually just cutting the animal and
I don't know enough about the purity pollution issues.
Well, they think of that as clean. So.
Yeah. Well.
And then
and probably not if it isn't drunk immediately. It probably
No, it's used right away.
Yeah.
And then they're really a nomadic tribal.
There's so much going on in this stuff. Some of it is like proto-scientific ideas about purity and pollution in terms of the safety and the potential for contagion. But I think we have to be careful about the tendency to want to justify behaviors because we see them as scientifically explained, because I think a lot of what's going on is part of a ritual perspective and enforcement of a ritual orientation.
Though I think there is a science sometimes that might explain it, like
but I wouldn't
trichinosis and these prohibitions
cloven-hoofed
about
animals
eating
and things like that.
Pig.
Yeah, but I wouldn't want to be reductionist.
No.
There's certain behaviors which are determined by more than one thing.
Anyway, that I was talking about this progression that you get. Then there's agriculture comes in. This changes everything once you get agriculture. So you
But
get these layers of culture. This happens
but
all over the
what you're looking at
place.
is something. I mean, it's interesting. You see it. It's both evolutionary, but it's also where things are at one time in
Right.
a society because they're,
Though
you
these
know,
might all go on at the same time.
yes, they
It
might well
isn't
go on
it
all at the same
isn't
time.
like you necessarily completely displace one when you bring the other one in.
Mhm.
And then merchandising comes later. It comes after agriculture. So you don't really get that trade network in the same way until you get tribes that are in the same place all the time, and then they start producing unique goods that they trade with other people.
Or they have natural resources in their areas that are of value to other people in other areas, and they find that there's
Right.
some interest in establishing trade connections. There are suggestions. I think Didi Kosambi and other people have written on ancient India have suggested that the whole doctrine of karma has a lot to do with the rise of merchandising between people
Mm-hmm.
because it's was seen as sort of allegorically a similar kind of thing of how um, trade behavior and moral behavior. It's a whole can of worms.
It
I think
is
we've chatted on enough
probably
about
too
this,
much,
but
but it might be helpful just sort
yeah.
of to get some idea of what these layers are about and why they're so concerned about what happens when these layers collide.
Layers collide.
Bye.
Oh yeah, bye.